Get that camera now!
He's broadcasting everything.
This is a setup. Grab the phone!
7 empty chairs stared back at me like accusers in a jury box. The waiter had stopped asking if I wanted to order appetizers about 20 minutes ago, probably figuring out what I already knew. Nobody was coming to Dan Callahan's 40th birthday dinner. The upscale Cleveland restaurant buzzed around me, couples laughing over wine, families celebrating something worth celebrating. Me? I sat alone at a table meant for 8, nursing my second whiskey and watching the ice melt like my marriage. Nothing says devoted family man like 7 empty chairs on your birthday, I muttered, raising my glass to the absent crowd. My phone buzzed. A text from Melanie. Sorry, honey. Showing the Peterson house ran late. Carter says we might close tonight. Rain check? Carter, always Carter these days. Carter Blake, my wife's business partner at Prestige Realty. Golden boy with perfect teeth and a BMW that cost more than I made in 6 months, running my small accounting firm. I scrolled up through our recent messages, each one a tiny paper cut, to whatever dignity I had left. Working late with Carter again. Carter thinks we should expand to Westlake. Carter says the market's perfect for luxury condos, Carter says. Carter thinks. Carter. The thing about being an accountant is you notice patterns. Numbers don't lie, even when people do. Melanie's late nights had increased by 40% over the past 3 months. Her text response time to me had doubled. Her credit card showed charges at restaurants I'd never been to, lingerie purchases from stores she claimed were for clients' staging needs. But the real kicker? Last week, I'd accidentally synced her phone to our shared iPad while helping her with a software update. Her messages started appearing on my screen in real time. You left your lipstick on my jacket again, Carter had texted her Tuesday night while I sat 10 feet away, watching the news. Good thing Dan never notices anything, she'd replied, adding a heart emoji that she hadn't used in our conversations for months. I'd screenshot everything naturally. 20 years of marriage, 15 years building our life together, and she thought I never noticed anything. The waiter approached cautiously, like I might bite. Sir, would you like me to remove the extra place settings? Leave them, I said. Sometimes it's good to see exactly where you stand. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Melanie. Dan, we need to talk. Tonight. Before you do something stupid that destroys this family's financial future. Call me immediately. Judge William Morrison, Melanie's father. Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I stared at the message, feeling something cold and calculating settle in my chest. The old man's timing was interesting, almost like he knew something was about to happen. I signaled the waiter. Check, please. As I waited, I pulled up my brother Tyler's contact. Tyler worked IT consulting, specialized in digital forensics for divorce attorneys. We'd grown apart over the years, but family is family. Tyler, it's Dan. I need a favor, a big one. What kind of favor? His voice was cautious. The kind that involves your particular skill set and my particular problem. Silence stretched between us. Then, when do you want to meet? Tonight, after I have a conversation with Judge Morrison. Dan, whatever you're planning. I'm not planning anything, I interrupted. I'm just tired of being the only honest person in a room full of liars. I left cash on the table, enough to cover my meal, and a generous tip for the waiter who'd watched my public humiliation with professional discretion. Outside, Cleveland's October air bit through my jacket. I stood on the sidewalk, watching couples walk past, hands intertwined, sharing private jokes and easy intimacy. Everything Melanie and I used to have before Carter Blake's perfect smile entered our lives. My phone rang. Judge Morrison. Dan, where are you? Standing outside Romano's, wondering why my wife is showing houses at 9 p.m. on my birthday. We need to talk, face to face, tonight. Funny thing, Judge, I was just thinking the same thing. My house. 1 hour. And Dan? His voice carried that judicial authority that had intimidated me for 15 years. Don't do anything rash. There are bigger things at stake here than your wounded pride. Wounded pride, like discovering your wife's affair was just a bruised ego instead of a shattered life. I'll be there, I said, hanging up. I walked to my car, a practical Honda Civic that Melanie constantly complained about. Carter drives a BMW, she'd say. It projects success. Well, tonight, Carter could project success all he wanted, because I was about to project something else entirely. As I drove through Cleveland's streets toward the judge's lakeside estate, I thought about patterns again, numbers, evidence, the beautiful, irrefutable logic of mathematics. Melanie thought I never noticed anything. Carter thought I was just the boring husband who paid the bills and stayed out of their way. Judge Morrison thought I was some weak-willed fool who'd take whatever scraps his daughter threw my way. They were about to learn something important about Dan Callahan, something I'd forgotten myself until tonight. I might be an accountant, but I'd built my business from nothing. I'd survived audits, economic downturns, and clients who tried to cheat the IRS. I knew how to research, how to plan, and how to execute strategies that left no loose ends. Most importantly, I knew how to make numbers tell stories, and the story I was about to tell would be a bestseller. My phone buzzed with another text from Melanie. "Don't wait up. This deal is taking forever." I smiled, genuinely smiled, for the first time in months. "Take all the time you need, sweetheart," I said to my empty car. "I've got work to do." Judge Morrison's estate sat on Lake Erie like a monument to old money and older secrets. I'd been here countless times over the years, family dinners, holidays, Riley's birthday parties when she was small. Always felt like a visitor, never quite measuring up to the Morrison family standards. Tonight felt different. Tonight I wasn't here as the disappointing son-in-law. The judge answered the door himself, unusual for a man who typically had others handle such mundane tasks. He looked older than his 65 years, worry lines etched deep around his eyes. "Dan, come in." His study smelled of leather and expensive scotch. Photos covered the walls, him with mayors, governors, business leaders. Melanie's real estate awards sat prominently on his desk, next to pictures of Riley. "Drink?" he offered. "I'm driving." "Suit yourself." He poured himself 3 fingers of something that probably cost more than my car payment. "We have a problem." "We?" "Don't play games, Dan. I know you've been digging into Melanie and Carter's business relationship." I kept my expression neutral. Business relationship. Is that what we're calling it? Judge Morrison's jaw tightened. What they do in their personal time is between them and God. What matters is the family trust, the business, Riley's future. Riley's future. I let that hang in the air. "Tell me, Judge, what kind of future are we building on lies?" "The profitable kind." He sat behind his massive desk, every inch the intimidating authority figure. "Prestige Realty is worth $2 million. Melanie's stake is 40%. Your daughter's college fund, your retirement, your comfortable lifestyle, it all depends on that business succeeding. And Carter's involvement? Carter brings connections, clients, revenue. And my wife brings what, exactly?" The judge's eyes flashed. "Careful, Dan." I stood up, pacing to the window that overlooked the lake. 20 years, Judge. 20 years I've listened to your family tell me I'm not ambitious enough, not successful enough, not good enough for your precious daughter. And now I'm supposed to pretend I don't see what's happening? What you see doesn't matter. What you do about it does. I turned back to face him. What if I've already done something? The color drained from his face. What do you mean? Hypothetically speaking, what would happen if someone had documented evidence of Carter's business practices? His personal practices? His creative approach to client funds and expense accounts? Judge Morrison set down his glass carefully. You're bluffing. Am I? I pulled out my phone, scrolled to a screenshot. October 15th. Carter texts Melanie. Move the Henderson deposit to the Cayman account. Judge's connections made it smooth. October 18th. Your husband's too stupid to check the books. We're golden. The silence stretched like a taut wire. You've been helping them launder money through the business, I continued, using your judicial connections to smooth things over. How many favors have you called in, Judge? How many blind eyes have you asked colleagues to turn? You don't understand the complexities. I understand numbers. I understand patterns. And I understand that my wife and her lover have been stealing from their own company while you provided legal cover. Judge Morrison stood slowly, his authority finally cracking. What do you want? Justice. Everyone has a price, Dan. Not everyone. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Judge, you might want to check the business accounts tomorrow. I made some transfers today. All legal, all documented, all designed to protect Riley's interests. What transfers? The kind that freeze assets pending investigation of financial irregularities. Amazing what you can accomplish when you have power of attorney for your minor daughter's trust fund. I left him standing in his study, probably reaching for his phone to call Melanie. Let him. By tomorrow morning, the story would be much bigger than one panicked phone call could fix. Tyler was waiting at an all-night diner near downtown, laptop open, looking like the tech wizard he'd become. We'd been close as kids, drifted apart when I got married, and he stayed single, focused on his career. You look terrible, he said, as I slid into the booth. Thanks. You look like you haven't slept in a week. Occupational hazard. He turned his laptop toward me. I've been busy since your call. Want to see what your wife and her boyfriend have been up to? The screen showed a detailed timeline. Text messages, email exchanges, credit card records, even GPS data from their phones. How did you... You don't want to know. Plausible deniability. Tyler's fingers flew over the keyboard. But everything here is admissible in court. I made sure of that. I scrolled through the evidence, each piece another nail in the coffin of my marriage. Hotel receipts, romantic dinners, text messages that made my stomach turn. But more interesting were the financial records. Look at this, Tyler pointed to a series of transactions. Carter's been skimming from client escrow accounts. Small amounts, spread across multiple deals. Your wife's been covering for him, adjusting the books. How much? $250,000, maybe more. And here's the beautiful part. Melanie thinks she's protecting him, but look at these transfers. He showed me another screen. Carter had been moving money to accounts Melanie didn't know about, preparing to disappear, leaving her holding the bag. He's planning to run, I said. Gets better. His wife, Paige? She's been cheating too, with her tennis instructor. Carter doesn't know. I stared at the web of betrayal spreading across Tyler's screen. This is bigger than I thought. It always is. Question is, what do you want to do about it? I thought about Judge Morrison's offer. Everyone has a price. About Melanie's dismissive texts. About Carter's smug confidence that I'd never figure it out. I want them to face consequences. Real ones. Tyler grinned, and for a moment, he looked like the little brother who used to help me build elaborate pranks. Then let's get to work. We spent the next 3 hours planning. Tyler handled the technical aspects. Anonymous tips to the state real estate board, carefully leaked information to investigative journalists, strategic social media posts that would go viral. My job was simpler. I knew their routines, their weaknesses, their pressure points. Phase 1 launches tomorrow, Tyler said as we prepared to leave. By the time they figure out what's happening, it'll be too late to stop. What about Riley? She's smart, Dan. Smarter than her mother gives her credit for. She'll figure out which side to be on. I drove home through empty streets, past the restaurant where I'd sat alone, past the real estate office where my wife was probably still working late with Carter. Tomorrow, everything would change. The boring, unambitious husband they'd dismissed was about to remind them why you should never underestimate an accountant with a grudge and a brother in IT. My phone buzzed with a text from Melanie. "Home in an hour. Hope you had a nice birthday dinner." I typed back, "Best birthday ever. Can't wait to see what tomorrow brings." For once, I wasn't lying. The next morning started like any other, which made it perfect. Melanie rushed around our kitchen, grabbing coffee and checking her phone, probably texting Carter about their next business meeting. "How was dinner last night?" she asked, without looking up. "Enlightening." "Good. Listen, I'll be late again tonight. We're presenting the Morrison Heights development to investors." Morrison Heights, named after her father's influence, funded by money that might not be entirely legitimate. The irony was delicious. "Sounds important," I said, buttering my toast with deliberate calm. "It is. This could set us up for life." "I'm sure it could." She kissed my cheek absently and rushed out, leaving behind the scent of expensive perfume and cheaper lies. I waited 10 minutes, then called in sick to my own office. My assistant Jennifer could handle things for a day. Today I had more important work. Tyler met me at his apartment, a converted warehouse space filled with computers, monitors, and enough electronic equipment to run a small television station. His setup looked like mission control for a space launch. "Phase 1 is already in motion," he said, gesturing to multiple screens showing news websites, social media feeds, and official databases. Anonymous tip went to Channel 7's investigative team. They're very interested in Prestige Realty's client fund management. How interested? Camera crew outside their office interested. I felt a surge of satisfaction. What else? Tyler pulled up another screen. State Real Estate Board received a detailed complaint about licensing violations. Carter's personal finances are now under review, and his wife Paige got some interesting photos in her email this morning. Photos. Your wife and her husband having lunch at the Ritz. Very cozy lunch. Paige is currently at her divorce attorney's office. The dominoes were falling faster than I'd expected. What about Judge Morrison? Judicial Ethics Committee received an anonymous report about potential conflicts of interest. Nothing actionable yet, but it'll make him nervous. I studied the screens, watching our carefully orchestrated chaos unfold in real time. They'll figure out it's coordinated. Eventually. But by then, the damage will be done. Public perception, professional reputation, that stuff doesn't recover easily. My phone rang. Melanie. Dan, something crazy is happening at the office. There are reporters outside asking about client funds and... Slow down. What kind of reporters? Channel 7. They're asking about Carter's expense accounts and some complaint to the state board. I don't understand where this is coming from. I could hear the panic in her voice, the first crack in her confident facade. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Carter thinks someone's targeting us, maybe a competitor or a disgruntled client. What does Judge Morrison think? Silence. Then, how did you know I called Dad? Lucky guess. What did he say? He's handling it. But Dan, if this gets out of hand, it could affect our finances. The business, Riley's college fund. Don't worry about Riley. I've been taking care of her interests. Another pause. What do you mean? Nothing dramatic. Just moved some money around, protecting assets in case there are business problems. You moved money? Without telling me? Seemed prudent, given the circumstances. I could practically hear her mind racing, trying to figure out what I knew and when I'd learned it. We need to talk, she said finally. Absolutely, but not tonight. I have plans. Plans? Business dinner, with Tyler. You remember Tyler, right? My brother? The one you said was antisocial and weird? Dan, this isn't the time for... Actually, Melanie, this is exactly the time. For everything. I hung up and turned to Tyler, who was grinning at his monitors. She's rattled, I said. Gets better. Carter just called his lawyer. His wife just called her lawyer. Judge Morrison just called someone he probably shouldn't have called on a recorded line. Recorded? Judicial phones are monitored for ethics compliance. Public record if you know how to request it. My phone buzzed with a text from Eddie, my friend who owned Murphy's Bar downtown. Saw the news about Prestige Realty. Melanie okay? I showed Tyler the message. Word spreading. Social media's picking it up. Summer Prestige scandal is starting to trend locally. I spent the next hour watching our plan unfold across multiple platforms. Local news picked up the story. Business bloggers started speculating about real estate corruption. Melanie's professional network began distancing themselves with carefully worded social media posts, but the real masterpiece was still coming. Ready for Phase 2? Tyler asked. What's Phase 2? He pulled up a new screen showing Carter's social media accounts, his business profiles, his carefully curated image of success and respectability. Carter likes to project success, right? BMW, expensive suits, exclusive restaurants. Right. Well, tonight he's having dinner at Le Bernardin with a potential investor. Big presentation, could save the business. How do you know that? His calendar syncs to his business email, which syncs to the company server, which has terrible security. I was beginning to appreciate my brother's particular talents. Here's what's going to happen, Tyler continued. Carter's presentation is going to include some unexpected slides, photos, text messages, financial records, all projected in high definition for his investor and everyone else in the restaurant. You can do that? I can do that. But here's the beautiful part. It's going to look like Carter did it himself. Technical malfunction with his laptop. Very embarrassing. What about Melanie? She'll be there too, supporting her business partner. Right up until the moment their dirty laundry gets displayed for Cleveland's financial elite. I thought about Melanie getting dressed up for another evening with Carter, probably choosing an outfit that would impress investors while sending subtle signals to her lover. She had no idea she was walking into a public execution. There's one more thing, Tyler said quietly. Are you sure about this? Once we do this, there's no going back. Your marriage, your family life, as you know it, it's over. I looked around Tyler's apartment, at the screens showing the systematic destruction of my wife's lies, at the evidence of betrayals that ran deeper than I'd imagined. It was already over, I said. I'm just making it official. Tyler nodded and turned back to his computers. Phase 2 launches at 8 p.m. I suggest you be somewhere with a good view of social media. Where will you be? Murphy's Bar. Eddie's got great Wi-Fi and better whiskey. Sounds perfect. As I prepared to leave, Tyler called after me. Dan, for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Takes guts to fight back. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. I drove home to shower and change, passing the Prestige Realty office where news vans were still parked outside. Through the windows, I could see Melanie and Carter in heated discussion, probably trying to figure out how their perfect scheme had suddenly become a public relations nightmare. Tonight, they'd learn the difference between a public relations problem and complete professional annihilation. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Judge Morrison, 12 from Melanie, and 3 from numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored them all. Some conversations were better had in person, preferably with witnesses and cameras present. At 8 p.m. sharp, I was going to be at Murphy's Bar, surrounded by friends, watching my wife and her lover discover what happens when you underestimate the boring guy who pays attention to details. The boring guy who just happened to have a very talented brother and a very long memory for insults. Murphy's Bar at 8 p.m. on a Thursday was usually quiet. A few regulars, some neighborhood folks grabbing dinner, nothing dramatic. Tonight felt different. Eddie had set up a big screen TV and invited half the neighborhood to watch, something special. You sure about this? Eddie asked, polishing glasses behind the bar with nervous energy. Too late now, I said, settling onto a stool with a perfect view of both the TV and Tyler's laptop. The bar filled up quickly. Word had gotten around about the Prestige Realty scandal, and Cleveland loves watching rich people fall from grace. Tyler sat in the corner, fingers flying over his keyboard like a concert pianist. "Showtime," he announced. The big screen switched to a live stream from Le Bernardin, Cleveland's most exclusive restaurant. Carter sat at a prominent table, laptop open, projector set up for his presentation. Melanie beside him, in a black dress that probably cost more than most people's rent. Across from them sat Richard Blackwood, a real estate mogul who could single-handedly save or destroy their business. "Ladies and gentlemen," Tyler said quietly, "I present Carter Blake's career finale." Carter started his presentation smoothly. Charts showing market growth, photos of successful developments, financial projections that painted Prestige Realty as Cleveland's premier investment opportunity. Then something went wrong. The slides changed. Instead of profit margins, the screen showed text messages between Carter and Melanie. Intimate messages. Explicit messages. Messages that made the entire restaurant go silent. Carter frantically clicked his laptop, trying to regain control. The slides kept changing. Bank records showing the skimmed funds, photos of Carter and Melanie at hotels, email exchanges with Judge Morrison about managing problems. "Technical difficulties," Carter announced loudly, sweat visible on his forehead. But the slides kept coming, financial records showing Carter's secret accounts, the money he'd been hiding from Melanie, evidence that he'd been planning to disappear with stolen funds, leaving her to face the consequences alone. Melanie's face went white as she realized what the documents meant. Her lover hadn't just been cheating on his wife, he'd been cheating on her too. The restaurant erupted. Other diners pulled out phones, recording everything. Richard Blackwood stood up, threw his napkin on the table, and walked out without a word. Murphy's Bar cheered like we were watching the Super Bowl. "Phase 2 complete," Tyler announced. "But wait, there's more." My phone rang. Melanie. "Dan, where are you?" "Murphy's Bar, watching the news. Crazy story about some real estate presentation gone wrong." "This isn't funny. Someone sabotaged Carter's laptop. Everything's ruined." "Everything was already ruined, Melanie. Tonight just made it public." Silence. Then, "You did this." "I didn't sabotage anything. I just stopped pretending I didn't notice what was happening." 20 years of marriage, Dan. 20 years and you destroy it all for revenge? "I didn't destroy our marriage. You did. I just documented it." She hung up. Around me, the bar patrons were glued to the screen, watching security footage that Tyler had somehow obtained, showing Carter and Melanie leaving the restaurant in humiliation. But Tyler wasn't done. "Ladies and gentlemen, for our next act, we go live to the Morrison estate." The screen switched to what looked like security camera footage from Judge Morrison's house. Police cars in the driveway, federal agents carrying boxes of documents, the judge himself in handcuffs being led to an unmarked sedan. "Federal investigation into judicial corruption," Tyler explained. "Amazing how quickly these things move when the evidence is overwhelming." My phone exploded with calls and texts, reporters wanting comments, neighbors asking if I was okay. Riley, texting from her friend's house. "Dad, what's happening? Mom's crying and won't tell me anything." I texted back, "Come home tomorrow. We'll talk about everything." Eddie refilled my whiskey. "How you feeling, Dan?" "Like I just woke up from a 20-year nightmare." The celebration at Murphy's continued past midnight, but I went home around 11. The house felt different, cleaner somehow, like a weight had been lifted from the air itself. Melanie wasn't there. Her car was gone, along with several suitcases I'd noticed missing from our closet. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "Dan, I know you hate me right now, but please think about Riley. Don't let your anger destroy our daughter's future. We need to talk, but not tonight. I'm staying at the Marriott downtown. Room 412. Room 412. I pulled out my phone and checked Tyler's surveillance data. Carter Blake was registered in room 410. Even in disgrace, they couldn't stay apart. I crumpled the note and threw it away. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, custody negotiations, financial settlements, and all the messy aftermath of a marriage's public execution. But tonight, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully in my own bed, in my own house, without listening for the sound of my wife's car pulling into the driveway at 2 a.m. with another lie about late client meetings. The war wasn't over. Melanie and Carter would regroup, probably try to salvage their careers and their relationship from the wreckage. Judge Morrison would use his connections to minimize his legal exposure. But the balance of power had shifted. I wasn't the clueless husband anymore, the convenient fool who paid the bills while his wife played house with her lover. I was Dan Callahan, the accountant who just reminded Cleveland's elite that numbers don't lie, patterns don't change, and underestimating the quiet guy in the corner is always a mistake. Tomorrow, Phase 3 would begin, and Phase 3 was going to be very personal. I woke up Friday morning to find my front yard full of news vans and my phone buzzing with interview requests. The Prestige Realty scandal had gone national overnight. Corruption, adultery, and judicial misconduct made for irresistible headlines. Riley came home around noon, looking shell-shocked. "Dad, everyone at school is talking about Mom and Mr. Blake. Is it true what they're saying?" We sat in the living room, curtains drawn against the media circus outside. At 15, Riley was old enough for honesty, but young enough to be devastated by it. "Yes, it's true. Your mother and Carter have been having an affair. They've also been stealing money from their business." Riley's eyes filled with tears. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I hoped I was wrong, and because I wanted to protect you as long as possible." "What happens now?" "Now we figure out how to move forward, together." She hugged me then, fierce and desperate. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry Mom did this to us." "It's not your fault, sweetheart. None of this is your fault." My phone rang. Tyler. "Dan, we have a problem. Judge Morrison made bail this morning, and he's not happy." "What kind of not happy?" "The kind that involves private investigators, intimidation tactics, and threats to make your life very difficult." I looked at Riley, still curled up beside me on the couch. "Can he do that?" "He can try. But Dan, there's something else. Melanie and Carter aren't just hiding at the Marriott, they're planning something. Flight reservations to the Cayman Islands where Carter's been stashing money. They're running? Tomorrow night. Private jet from Burke Lakefront Airport." I felt cold anger settle in my chest. "What about Riley? What about the custody arrangements?" "Melanie's filing emergency papers claiming you're mentally unstable and dangerous. She wants temporary custody so she can protect Riley from your vengeful behavior." The audacity was breathtaking. Steal from clients, cheat on your husband, plan to flee the country with stolen money, then claim the victim is dangerous. "She's not taking Riley anywhere," I said quietly. "I figured you'd say that. Which is why I've been working on Phase 3. I'm listening. Tonight, Prestige Realty is hosting their annual Client Appreciation Gala. It was supposed to be canceled, but Melanie convinced the board to go ahead with it. Damage control, she says. Show confidence in the company's future. That's insane. Who would attend? You'd be surprised. Curiosity mostly. People want to see the train wreck up close. I thought about it. A public venue, lots of witnesses, media attention already focused on the scandal. What are you proposing? One final presentation, but this time we control the entire narrative. Tyler outlined his plan. It was audacious, risky, and completely insane. It was also perfect. I'll need Eddie's help, I said, and we'll need to be very careful about Riley. Already handled, Eddie's excited to help, and I've arranged for Riley to stay with her friend Jessica tonight. Sleepover, movies, normal teenage stuff. What about the legal risks? Everything we're doing is technically legal. Public information, lawful assembly, Freedom of speech? Melanie and Carter are the ones with legal problems? That evening, I put on my best suit, the one I'd worn to our wedding 20 years ago. It still fit, though it felt different now. Less like a costume, more like armor. Riley hugged me goodbye. Be careful, Dad. I will. And Riley, whatever happens tonight, remember that I love you more than anything in this world. I love you too. The Ritz-Carlton's ballroom was packed despite everything. Cleveland's social elite, business leaders, curious neighbors, and enough media to cover a presidential visit. The scandal had made Prestige Realty the most famous real estate company in Ohio, though not for reasons they'd intended. Melanie stood near the entrance in a stunning red dress, playing the role of confident businesswoman despite the chaos surrounding her. Carter worked the room beside her, all charm and false confidence. They hadn't seen me yet. Tyler positioned himself near the audiovisual equipment, laptop ready. Eddie mingled with the crowd, making sure our presentation would have maximum impact. At exactly 8 p.m., the lights dimmed for Melanie's planned remarks. She took the stage with practiced grace, microphone in hand. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming tonight despite the recent challenges facing our company. I want to address the rumors and speculation directly. She launched into a prepared speech about misunderstandings, competitive sabotage, and the company's commitment to ethical business practices. The crowd listened politely, but I could see skepticism in their faces. Then, Tyler's plan kicked into gear. The ballroom screens lit up with a new presentation. Not Melanie's damage control slideshow, but a comprehensive timeline of the entire scandal. Every text message, every financial transaction, every lie documented in chronological order. But this wasn't just about the affair or the stolen money. Tyler had uncovered something bigger. The screens showed connections between Prestige Realty, Judge Morrison's judicial decisions, and a network of corrupt real estate deals spanning 5 years. City contracts awarded to friends, zoning decisions that benefited specific developers, building permits fast-tracked through judicial influence. The Morrison family hadn't just been covering up an affair, they'd been running a criminal enterprise. Melanie tried to regain control of the microphone, but her voice was drowned out by gasps from the audience as each new revelation appeared on screen. Carter attempted to reach the AV equipment, but Eddie and several other patrons blocked his path. The final slides showed flight reservations, Cayman Islands bank accounts, and a detailed plan for Carter and Melanie to disappear with over $2 million in stolen funds. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Reporters surged toward the stage, shouting questions. Business leaders headed for the exits, distancing themselves from the scandal. Several attendees were already on their phones, probably calling lawyers or law enforcement. Through it all, I stood calmly at the back of the room, watching 20 years of lies and betrayal finally face the light of truth. Melanie's eyes found mine across the chaos. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the woman I'd loved and the man she'd underestimated. Then she mouthed a single word. Why? I pulled out my phone and typed a text. Because I noticed everything. Police arrived within minutes, probably tipped off by Tyler's careful coordination. Carter was arrested trying to leave through the kitchen. Melanie was taken into custody at the podium, still holding the microphone she'd planned to use for damage control. Judge Morrison's bail was revoked based on the new evidence of ongoing criminal conspiracy. By midnight, the story was trending nationally. Cleveland real estate scandal explodes at Gala led every major news site. I drove home through empty streets, past the restaurant where I'd sat alone on my birthday, past the real estate office that would probably be shuttered by morning, past the lake where Judge Morrison's estate sat dark and empty. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, legal proceedings, custody hearings, financial settlements, and the complicated process of rebuilding a life from the wreckage of betrayal. But tonight, for the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Not the dismissed husband, not the convenient fool, not the man who never noticed anything. I was Dan Callahan, and I just reminded Cleveland that the quiet ones are often the most dangerous when finally provoked to action. Saturday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was making coffee when the doorbell rang, and through the peephole, I saw two men in expensive suits who definitely weren't reporters. "Mr. Callahan, we represent certain parties who would like to discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement." I opened the door but kept the chain latched. "Which parties?" "People who believe this situation has gotten out of hand. People with resources and influence who could make your legal problems disappear." "I don't have legal problems." The taller man smiled without warmth. "Everyone has legal problems, Mr. Callahan. It's just a matter of perspective." I closed the door and called Tyler immediately. "They're trying to intimidate you," he said after I described the visitors. "Judge Morrison still has friends, and they're getting nervous about what else might come out." "What else could come out?" "You really want to know?" An hour later, Tyler showed me files that made the Prestige Realty scandal look like a parking ticket. The Morrison network had tentacles reaching into city contracts, state development projects, and federal housing programs. We weren't talking about millions anymore. We were talking about tens of millions. "This is why they're scared," Tyler explained. "Your little revenge plot accidentally exposed a criminal conspiracy that goes back decades." My phone rang. An unknown number. "Dan Callahan?" "Speaking." "This is Detective Sarah Martinez, Cleveland PD. We need to talk. There have been some threats made against you and your family." We met at a coffee shop downtown, away from the media circus that had taken up permanent residence in my neighborhood. Detective Martinez was younger than I'd expected, with sharp eyes and the tired expression of someone who'd seen too much corruption. "Judge Morrison made bail again this morning," she said without preamble. "His lawyers are very good, and he has friends in high places. But more importantly, he's desperate." "What kind of desperate?" "The kind that makes rational people do irrational things. We have credible intelligence that he's planning something dramatic to discredit you before the federal investigation goes any deeper." "Like what?" "We're not sure. But Mr. Callahan, you need to understand, you've accidentally become the key witness in what might be the biggest corruption case in Ohio's history. That makes you valuable, but it also makes you a target." I thought about Riley, staying with friends while her world fell apart. About the men in expensive suits who'd visited my house. About Judge Morrison's connections and resources. "What do you recommend?" "Lay low, stay visible, don't go anywhere alone, and document everything." That evening, Eddie called with disturbing news. "Dan, you need to get down here. Now." Murphy's bar was packed, but not with the usual crowd. These were strangers, well-dressed men nursing drinks they weren't really drinking, asking casual questions about Dan Callahan. "They've been here for 2 hours," Eddie whispered, "asking about your habits, your friends, your schedule." I looked around the bar, counting at least 6 men who didn't belong. Professional surveillance, probably private investigators hired by Judge Morrison's legal team. "They're building a case," Tyler said when I called him. "Trying to paint you as unstable, vengeful, dangerous, classic character assassination." "How do we fight that?" "We don't fight it. We use it." Tyler's plan was typically audacious. If Judge Morrison wanted to paint me as dangerous, we'd give him exactly what he expected, but on our terms, with our narrative, and with maximum public exposure. "Sunday night," Tyler explained. "Judge Morrison is hosting a private meeting at his estate, damage control with his remaining allies, probably planning their next move against you." "How do you know that?" "Because his housekeeper is Eddie's cousin, and she's been listening to everything." The plan was simple in concept, terrifying in execution. We would crash Judge Morrison's private meeting, confront him directly, and force the entire conspiracy into the open, all while being live-streamed to social media. "It's insane," I said. "It's perfect," Tyler replied. "He's expecting you to hide, to be intimidated. Instead, you walk right into his house and dare him to do something about it." Sunday evening, I drove to the Morrison estate with Tyler in the passenger seat and Eddie following in his truck. 3 cars of private investigators followed us, probably reporting our movements to Judge Morrison. Perfect. We wanted an audience. The estate's gates were open, luxury cars parked in the circular driveway. Through the windows, I could see Judge Morrison's emergency meeting in progress, lawyers, business leaders, and several faces I recognized from city government. "You sure about this?" Tyler asked, adjusting the hidden cameras we'd positioned on my jacket. "Too late to back out now." I walked up to the front door and rang the bell. The housekeeper answered, looking nervous but determined. "He's expecting you, Mr. Callahan." Judge Morrison's study was packed with Cleveland's power elite, all looking uncomfortable and angry. Conversations stopped when I entered. "Gentlemen," Judge Morrison said, standing behind his desk like a general addressing troops. "Dan Callahan, the man who's been terrorizing my family." "Terrorizing?" I looked around the room. "Is that what we're calling telling the truth now? You've destroyed my daughter's life, ruined her business, and exposed private family matters for your own petty revenge." "I documented crimes, Judge. Your crimes, your daughter's crimes, and Carter's crimes. The only thing I destroyed was your ability to hide them." One of the lawyers stepped forward. "Mr. Callahan, we're prepared to offer you a substantial settlement to end this harassment campaign." "How substantial?" $5 million. Tax-free. All you have to do is sign a non-disclosure agreement and disappear." I pretended to consider it. "And my daughter?" "Remains with her mother naturally. Melanie will be released pending appeal, charges reduced to misdemeanors." "What about Carter?" "Mr. Blake has agreed to cooperate with authorities in exchange for reduced charges." I looked around the room at these powerful men trying to buy their way out of consequences. You know what's funny? A week ago, I might have taken that deal. I might have convinced myself it was better for Riley. Better for everyone. "It is better for everyone," Judge Morrison said. "But here's what I've learned this week. Sometimes the right thing and the easy thing are completely different." I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen. "This conversation is being live-streamed to about 50,000 viewers right now. Your bribery attempt, your conspiracy to obstruct justice, your plan to let criminals walk free. It's all being recorded." The room erupted in chaos. Lawyers shouted about illegal recording, business leaders headed for the exits, and Judge Morrison's face turned purple with rage. "You have no idea what you've done," he snarled. "I know exactly what I've done. I've shown Cleveland who you really are." Judge Morrison lunged around his desk, probably intending to grab my phone or maybe just grab me. But he was 65 years old and out of shape, while I was 40 and running on pure adrenaline. I sidestepped easily, and he stumbled into his own bookshelf, sending law books cascading to the floor. The symbolism was perfect, and Tyler's hidden cameras caught every second. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced to the phone's camera, "Judge William Morrison attempting to assault the man who exposed his crimes." Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Detective Martinez had been monitoring the live stream, waiting for exactly this moment. As officers flooded into the study, I walked calmly to the window overlooking Lake Erie. The same view I'd admired countless times during family gatherings, back when I thought I was part of this family, instead of just married into it. "Mr. Callahan," Detective Martinez said, "are you all right?" "Never better." Judge Morrison was arrested again, this time with federal charges that wouldn't allow bail. Several of his co-conspirators were taken into custody based on their recorded statements during the meeting. The live stream had been viewed by over 200,000 people, making it the most watched social media event in Cleveland's history. As I walked out of the Morrison estate for the last time, Tyler clapped me on the shoulder. "How does it feel?" I looked back at the house where I'd spent 20 years feeling like an outsider, where my wife had grown up learning that money and connections could solve any problem, where Judge Morrison had built his empire of corruption and influence. It feels like justice. The story would continue for months. Trials, appeals, financial restitution, and the slow process of rebuilding Cleveland's real estate industry without the Morrison Network's influence. But my part was done. I'd gone from the dismissed husband to the man who brought down a criminal conspiracy, from the boring accountant to the guy who reminded everyone that numbers don't lie and truth doesn't negotiate. Most importantly, I'd shown Riley that sometimes fighting back is the only way to move forward. As we drove away from the estate, my phone buzzed with a text from my daughter. "Dad, I saw the live stream. I'm proud of you. Come pick me up. I want to come home." Home. For the first time in years, that word meant exactly what it should mean. A place where truth mattered more than appearances, where loyalty was earned rather than assumed, and where Dan Callahan could finally be himself without apology or explanation. The boring guy who'd just reminded Cleveland that underestimating quiet people is always a mistake.